don't. Or do you have the guest password? There you go.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm assuming I automatically log into this and using that.
Oh, you just sign this and then this thing. And you would like mine. Randall, break.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
You're still logging in.
No.
Okay, Sarah, I sent you the two documents.
To
Sorry for-
myself or to the,
To you and the LSC, so if you could save those documents, I'm sorry for the last minute.
oh, this is for the equity?
Okay, well, I'll call us to order at 6:08 for a special LSC meeting.
Okay. Roll call. Andrade,
Present.
Bowman? Is she on there?
No.
No. Let me know if you see her. I don't think Violetta's coming.
Yeah, I think so.
Clancy,
Present.
Cresswell.
Here.
Hilbrand,
Here.
Kerr,
Present.
Land,
Here.
Manal Happenwood.
Here.
Juan here, nothing but here. In the ball.
Present.
Here. Then.
Here.
So just no Bowman and Violetta. Okay, sorry, I mean, let's do not disturb me. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
A second?
Over a second. Roll call, Andrade,
Yes.
Clancy.
Here.
Cresswell. Hilbrand,
Yay.
Kerr,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Hoppenworth.
Yes.
Yes, Martin Sack,
Yes.
Benjavar,
Yes.
Powers,
Yay.
Zen.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 10th, 2022 LSC regular and just a regular, we didn't have a closed. Regular meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Andrade,
Yes.
Clancy,
Yeah.
Cresswell,
Yay.
Hilbrand,
Yeah.
Kerr,
Here. Yeah.
Land,
Yes.
Hoppenworth,
Yes.
yes, Merchant Sack,
Yes.
Benjavar,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Zen.
Yes.
Okay, and then I make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 16th, 2022 LSC emergency meeting.
A second?
Okay, second. Andrade,
Yes.
Clancy,
Yay.
Cresswell,
Yay.
Hilbert,
Yay.
Kerr,
Yay.
and
Abstain.
then not happen
Yes.
yes, Merkin Sack.
Yes.
Benjavar,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Zen.
Yes.
All right, I am done.
Okay, we will do public participation first. And I think we have one speaker signed up. And I think they are on.
No.
The student
Oh.
is here.
Okay. Okay, because this is their own meeting, so. I guess, do you want,
I
will
think
we pick her up in the audience?
I think she should come instead of.
Yeah,
it's
if
right
somebody
there.
was fine. Thanks for coming. And it's, yeah, it's fine to take whatever time you need.
Oh, I can begin speaking?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it's loading for a second. My name is Liliana Negri, and I may need longer than 3 minutes to get through my statement. I'm here to talk about my experience on the track team at Jones so that the girls who come next won't be put through what I was. I've come in person specifically because I want to be seen, since I've been rendered invisible by these events. During practice with the track team this year, 2 male teammates, whose names I'm not mentioning in this public forum only so that I won't be silenced, would daily and routinely, as a partial list, rope me, haze me, pick me up off the ground, attempt to kiss me, attempt to choke me, repeatedly ask me out on dates, pick me up by my hair, swing me in circles, put their arms around me as I'd walk, press against me from behind so close that I could hear them breathe and feel their bodies, drag me by my wrists, force me to open my mouth, yank my hair daily, place their hands on my chest, hug me while grabbing my buttocks, force my legs open to get between them and make me bleed. Does this sound like the treatment of a human or a rag doll? That's what I was to these boys. I'm a toy that they fought over. I was made to feel less than human every single day. Torment from one of them would lead to punishment from the other, and the vicious cycle continued. What hurts most is that the coaches knew. Every time they witnessed something, they would lecture me for the actions of others. I was told I was the problem. I was a distraction. I needed to focus. I told a boys captain that encouraged another teammate's alleged non-consensual actions on a girl is inappropriate and should stop. A coach pulled me aside the next day to tell me in very vague language that the same boys captain reported me to her and I needed to stop messing around or she'd be forced to choose between myself and one of the boys. Later, she claimed that that was the conversation that we had where she removed me from hurdles. But I wasn't told this until much later by Mr. Mitchell, and then I've been told that I've been phased out. Coach Conway can attest to the so-called personality differences between that coach and I that he informed me of while encouraging me to quit hurdles because they're difficult. I started to feel like it was all my fault. The day that I got what is now a scar on my leg, I was screamed at by a boys captain in front of 2 coaches and the majority of the sprints team. He said that a senior not taking the season seriously is wasting everyone's time. He then claimed his rant wasn't directed at anyone despite the fact that he made eye contact with me, the only female senior on the team, and me alone. I emailed administration to report everything beginning on March 17th and CCing all administrators except for Ms. Gonzalez-Torres, who I inadvertently overlooked. At Mr. Mitchell's encouragement, my counselor checked in with me, but I was only able to talk about how there was nothing we could do. Despite this, a plan was put in place and the boys were told not to look at me, talk to me, or interact with me. I remained in classes with them, however, the same day. And after a week, they resumed talking to me and verbally harassing me without consequence and without recourse. Coach Beebe was out for the month of March, and when he returned, I was the one who had to inform him about my report. He had not been told by a single adult. The coaches wouldn't so much as look in my direction while I watched them both give individual one-on-one time to the boy who hurt me. I was told to go to the other side of the track and not allowed to practice with the rest of the team. A captain's meeting was held so that we could all be lectured about class, pride, and character. Imagine how maddening it was to hear the hypocrisy. When I tried speaking to the coaches, I was ignored, and later they claimed it was all a miscommunication or a misunderstanding on my part. I wasn't given any events to run because they told me they assumed I was injured after they refused to speak to me. Despite having the times and attendance, my season ended the night that I sent that email. I was expecting the coaches to apologize for failing to protect me from what happened right in front of them, but they all claim ignorance. I was blocked from the Remind app after calling out a coach on a contradiction in his story. The other coach told me to my face that I should keep my hands to myself. I laughed so that I wouldn't cry. I asked him to explain why he felt the need to say that to me in multiple times, and he said we would talk about it in a meeting. My parents and I asked about this meeting repeatedly, but we were put off, but no meeting ever happened. Both of my parents and Mr. Conway, one of the coaches, followed up on my original email in March, which Mr. Mitchell also responded to. I forwarded the entire email thread to the OSB on March 18th. I emailed Mr. Mitchell on March 27th to reiterate that I did wish to pursue an investigation. Mr. Mitchell kept me updated and told me about his repeated emails to OSB, including those emails going unanswered. On March 16th, 2 months after my initial report, Mr. Mitchell emailed me to say that he knew I was still waiting patiently, but they were waiting for a document from the district as they followed procedure. And on May 17th, Mr. Mitchell let me know that they had received the document and promised a response by the end of the day. The promised letter listed the concerns I'd raised, and the OSB had found sufficient evidence to substantiate one allegation of sex/gender-based harassment, but insufficient evidence to substantiate the second allegation. I was offered a list of available resources, but not one person from those resources contacted me. That was the outcome I waited 2 months for. Because the security cameras in both the hallway and weight room from the relevant time period were not working, there was no evidence about the actions from one of the boys. That boy gets to walk through the halls with his head held high, while I'm so depressed that I went from straight A's to being lucky that I'm graduating. The boys' team said, in my hearing, that I was a liar, there's no evidence, and someone should muzzle me. Everyone who called me crazy and said I was overreacting got to feel like they were right. And in the end, when the result of the investigation came back, allegedly there's a group chat about me as well. Because I was brave enough to speak up, I was crushed for daring to hope that I could rely on people for protection. Instead, I lost my happy place. Track practice was replaced by therapy. I changed my routes to classes. I made myself late so that I wouldn't have to see them and feel small all over again. The lunch ladies noticed I stopped eating, and it was to avoid these boys. I know the facts, but I also know no one believes me, and I know that there are no consequences to boys' sexual and physical assaults on me. These boys are sophomores. I'll graduate, but other girls will still be in the track and cross country with these boys. They'll still walk the halls with these boys, and at this time, I have no hope for any action being taken to protect girls from them. Jones desperately needs policies, not safety plans, especially since those don't work. The outlined unacceptable behavior and its consequences regarding sexual harassment and assault. Security cameras that are not working should be repaired, even though repeatedly ongoing behavior that is witnessed by multiple people should not require video evidence for action to be taken. I'm begging the LSC and administration to take concrete action to protect Jones students from the small handful of students who physically and sexually assault other students with impunity. This must not continue. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and telling us this and be willing to say it publicly.
Thank you.
And it's not acceptable, and you're not the first student who has told us stories like this year. And I've been not happy with the results that I've gotten when meeting after meeting, I report these things to OSP, to the OIG, and yet here it is, May, we're still hearing it, and it's not acceptable. Other people have comments here and questions.
I agree that it is not acceptable behavior. And I agree with you that you should not have been treated this way by anybody in the school. Any of the boys, anybody. for that
Including
matter.
the coaches.
Yes, let me finish, okay? Including the coaches or anyone else that was not responding to what your needs are. We followed the things we were supposed to do. We've reported everything to OSP. We're doing everything we can to address every issue that comes toward us and taking the steps necessary that we hope will prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future. And that includes addressing specifically to not only the individuals who've been involved, but also at the beginning of sports seasons or even during practice before sports seasons begin. Speaking with every team, talking with everyone, especially teams where there are mixed gender on the teams themselves, or any kind of interactions between the teams, to make sure that they understand that this is not how we operate. It's not acceptable. I am glad that you said that it was a small handful of people. Doesn't make it any less hurtful. That it wasn't a large number of people. But please be assured, we take it seriously. We do everything we can both to alleviate or respond to it, but also to prevent, if at all possible. So that's why we're going to continue in that direction.
Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I had a question. When you say who, like we, who's included in that?
School leadership,
Which includes,
myself, Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Plunkett, and Ms. Abet.
the only person I've had any correspondence with through the duration of all these months, not only in this OSP matter, but previous ones, is Mr. Mitchell, completely and entirely.
That is correct, yes.
Why is that?
We don't have to deal with things in a large group setting.
Oh, you
in
don't
other
have to
words.
deal with them? I did. I had to deal with them. Mr. Mitchell went above and beyond to pester
Yes.
OSP so that he would get a response, despite being ignored up to like 3 times, I believe.
Mr. Mitchell was working on that while others of us are working on other things as well. We don't necessarily, all 4 of us, take action simultaneously. We're all kept informed of it, and then an individual within the team addresses that particular issue. Just as I am addressing specific issues involving specific circumstances that the others are kept informed of, but they're not actually working on it. We divide up the issues and we work on them in that way.
I was just looking for some sort of explanation as to why he was the only person working on any of this, and the reasoning to me asking for immediate assistance so that one of these individuals would be removed from one of my class periods the day that I reported it. That didn't happen because he was so overwhelmed. So I'm just wondering how the workload really trickled down.
How it trickles down, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean.
I think she's wondering how the work is distributed if Mr. Mitchell has too many cases like this to deal with, who takes it on?
Because that's been the case as long as I've known him.
And that's because every one of us on the administrative team has a whole large slice of things that we're working on. We're looking at, especially with regard to some of the things that have happened, we're looking at reorganizing some things within our administrative team so that we're having a greater sharing, especially in areas that are student discipline related. We had a small enough volume of issues that was able for one person or one person assisted by one other to address most of those issues. That's not the case anymore. And I think coming off of COVID and all the other things and the disruptions we've had, that has become abundantly clear that it needs to be more, that needs to be more shared. However, each of us does share in some of those things in one way or another. We try not to work at cross purposes to each other, however. In other words, when you have more than one person as the point person, it can be difficult to make sure you're getting everything done that needs to be done. Yes.
Why wasn't I able to ask questions after the investigation had finished? Because to me, it felt like they were more concerned with like student privacy than answering questions to like about an investigation that had already ceased and been concluded. I thought that was strange.
I don't know because I was not part of that. All I can say is that one of the things that is difficult for people to understand is if a student has disciplinary action or we take whatever actions are called for, we cannot necessarily share that with the other people involved, whether it be the other students or whether it be their parents or whatever it might be.
I didn't ask questions about like the consequence to the action. I knew about like the lack of, and that was enough information. That wasn't really my concern. What was my question was like, if the person who I had an allegation against, that action on that said day was witnessed by people, but then those people gave their testimony and that was somehow not substantiated when the other allegation, completely separate, in a different location where there's no security cameras present for that event, but there are eyewitnesses, much like the other situation, I was confused as to how they could come to completely different conclusions under similar circumstances.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
Right.
so you do, as a student, if you're part of an investigation by the OSP, you have the right to the investigatory materials about your case. So you should request those or have your parents request them.
I would love to.
And then really you have access to that under student privacy laws as well. And so you can make that request with that. If they don't want to give you access to that, you can ask the State Board of Ed to intervene. So please do pursue that because it is in the OSP manual that you have a list of rights. And one of those is to have access to basically all the materials about an investigation that involves you. And so you should definitely request that if you have questions about it. Deborah, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Liliana, first, I'm terribly, horribly sorry that this happened to you. It should happen to nobody for any reason. And I have no words for the harm that's been done to you. For the adults in the room, particularly for the school employees, for our school leadership, I have to tell you that when I hear
Wait, Deborah, wait. Sorry, we're having a sound issue.
Now you should be able to hear.
shall I try again?
Yep.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
Okay. So I'll just go back to where I started, Liliana. This is horrible. I'm just so sad that this happened to you and that the harm that you've experienced at our school, and nothing can take that away. And I'm terribly sorry for the adults in the leadership positions in our school and for the coaches and for the counselors. There should never, ever be a situation where an adult in our school tells a student who brings forward a sexual harassment allegation with witnesses that they brought it on themselves or they contributed to it. There is no such thing. And when I read Liliana's letter this afternoon and when I heard her speak this evening, I'm disgusted because we should have had enough training for the entire staff and every coach and every adult who walks into any kind of contact with our students that this is unacceptable. It is hard for a victim to come forward and share their story because the harm happens over and over and over again each time. And it's generally women, but it's not always women. Each time the victim has to tell their story. And that I hear reports of adults in our community who tell a student who brings forward their situation of harm that there is nothing that can be done for them, or they brought it upon themselves, or they contributed, or they shouldn't have dressed a certain way, or keep them their hands to themselves, or you go work in some other aspect of the field because we don't want you near the rest of our team. I'm disgusted, and we can do better and we should do better, and there is no excuse for that. I understand that while investigations are pending, people want to wait and follow procedures, but no one should ever, ever give a victim in our school or an alleged victim in our school the impression that they brought this on themselves. That's unforgivable.
Thanks, Deborah. I'm going to share a link. Maybe Sarah can put it in the YouTube chat. So that's slides on how to report. It has a link to the OSP manual, and kind of at the end there it has a list of rights. And students also have a right to supports. If it is disrupting their schooling, you right to supports to make sure that it doesn't. And you know, that is CPS policy, that's federal law, and it's really not okay that anyone could tell you in, you know, spring of this school year that there's nothing to be done.
It's too late.
I would also like to say I had no knowledge as a parent that the Title IX training for students took place this year. That was supposed to happen by May 27th in every school in this
We're still recording though, right?
Correct. Yeah, but it'll just be, yeah, so I hope that the entire school community knows that not only are adults supposed to be trained on the Title IX procedures, every student is supposed to be. That was supposed to happen in every CPS school in this district by May 27th. I didn't get a permission slip home or an opt-out form home as a parent. I'm assuming that this training did not happen. It didn't happen last year until I asked about it. I didn't think I had to ask for a second year in a row. This is part of an agreement with the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, who is monitoring the district because of our massive violation of Title IX, which is unfortunately still happening. And it's really not okay. Happens if I go.
There we go.
Oh, it's okay. Okay. Perfect. Is that? Oh my God. Yeah. It's just not okay. And like, what is OSP doing that no one's monitoring this? So I mean, I will continue to make reports when people report stuff to me. I'm certainly going to report the coaches to the Office of the Inspector General because, you know, adults that are violating these policies need to be reported. If you have it in you to make more reports or your parents do, please do. And it's really not okay. And we don't want students going through this year after year. You know, students, this behavior may happen, but this sort of response is not okay. So go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to say how insane it is. Like, it was truly a surreal experience to be groped not once but twice while speaking to a coach with another person's like arms around me. Like it happened while I was speaking to her. And then the separate event where I was picked up by my hair from a seated position where my legs were at 90 degrees, picked up physically by just my hair, some of it ripped out, while maintaining eye contact with the same coach who claims he saw nothing. He also stated, please like knock it off. But when I was texting him, and I have the screenshots because I've been blocked from the app, I have the screenshots where he was explaining that because like, oh, I'd been in a car accident, I was on my phone, I didn't see anything. And I'm like, if you didn't see anything, then making the statement like knock it off implies that there was something you saw, correct? And that was what got me blocked. I didn't receive a response after that.
Ellen, do you want to go? Please refer. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Roberta.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Lily? I just want to say a few words here. As you know, as maybe most people know here, and those who are watching, I am a parent of a junior who's on the girls' cross-country team and track team. And I know, right, that Kat has benefited so much from your leadership on the field and off the field. And I have been one of the strongest advocates and supporters of the girls' team because I see how hard you are and all the effort you put in. And I believe that each one of the members on that team, from our fastest runner to our emerging runner, has this ability and capability to do great things. And those skill sets that we learn are transferable into our real lives. Your courage has always been there, and it is still there. In 2019, 2020, as soon as the pandemic and we were going into the track season, it's my understanding, I remember this and I believe this to be true. You were at the last meet. This shows your courage as a student athlete, as a teammate. At that last meet, you were one of the first female student athletes to compete in the hurdles with no prior training. And I stood there and watched, and you were going to do this, and you did. And you're here now speaking up and telling your truth, and your lived experiences are real. And that's the courage you show as a leader. It's the courage that you show for the values that are instilled in you. And I want to just modify something you said. You said, it's too late. That is not true. It's 100% absolutely not true. Because you speaking up today means a lot for every other student who has felt or who has been in your similar situation at this school or outside this school, to be able to speak up, to address these things that are important to you, that have impacted you, or may have impacted other students. So you are doing something about it by being here, by speaking up and speaking out. And I greatly appreciate that. And if there's something that this LSE can do, I think we should do it. And for the new LSE members who will be taking their positions in July, this is a call for each one of them to see you, to hear you, and to actually take action to address these systems, to work collaboratively with the administrative leadership team so that we minimize this and that this doesn't happen again. So there are three things I think you mentioned in your statement: is policies, procedures, and concrete action. I think those are things that the school with the LSE, the new LSE with the administrative leadership they have to work on that, and having a hard reset with the athletic department, because this has been a reoccurring theme. And if that means, and I think Dr. Powers, you alluded to this, before the season starts, having a team meeting where it sounds like what you're asking for is the school leadership to be there at those team meetings to talk about what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, and how to conduct and carry ourselves as student athletes, representative of the school and the school community and beyond these walls. And I think that is important to have those discussions before every season for every sport, to understand how we behave, how we conduct ourselves as student athletes, and how we treat each other. And if there are incidents that comes up in situations where students are harmed, I think that's when we put a pause on practices and competition so the coaches can address it in a larger group. Because what may impact you directly, I believe, impacts everyone else indirectly. And I think this is important. I think one of the things that we have done as the LSC and the Equity Committee, with the support of the administrative leadership, is hire a climate coordinator to help, right? To help us move forward. Because from my perspective, from my experience, my observations, it seems this, before the new coaches, the previous coach for the boys has created a culture that is toxic.
I wouldn't say only the previous boys coach, but I agree.
So I think that's where we have to move forward and taking those concrete steps that you're asking for, that you're demanding. So thank you.
Ellen?
Lily, first I wanted to say I hear you, I see you, and I believe you. It takes a lot of courage to come to this space to speak. It takes a lot of courage to do all these things that I've been doing. I want to acknowledge all of that about this person. I agree with a lot of what Roberto just said about next steps. I think that those conversations prior to the season beginning being facilitated by somebody who has really strong training, I think, with Title IX, I think would be really helpful. I think Mr. Lopez can assist in that. I want to make sure that it's somebody who's really like very specifically aware of like Title IX sexual harassment and discrimination. Just because I think that there's potential, unfortunately, for missteps at times. We're already seeing in this case, there are adults who mishandled the situation because I'm not sure actually exactly why, but they mishandled the situation. And so, and I also just want to echo, I know students are required to have this training. I also know all CPS staff are required to have this training. So like the coaches should know these policies and should not be dismissing somebody's experience. One suggestion I have regarding the schedule change that you brought up, I recognize our school is very crowded. We have not a lot of flexibility with schedule. That doesn't really matter in this situation, right? This is like one of those emergency situations where if a student is in close contact with somebody who has done them this level of harm, that perpetuates the harm, right? In an ongoing fashion. So I think we need to have some sort of a parachute situation, right? Where like, this is an urgent need for a change, recognizing this is something that should not happen in the first place, but if it happens, we should be making sure the harm does not continue to occur, changing lunch periods, changing classes, like that's, we can make this happen right at our school. We don't need to continue to inflict this on our students.
Go ahead. Yeah, it was incredibly uncomfortable to have to explain to one of the boys, like that I walked into a classroom with the same day as just like talking to administration about how I wouldn't have to be in contact with them anymore. I walked into that class period and the first thing he does, of course, is come up to me. And it's just, it was unimaginably uncomfortable to have to explain to someone the things that they had done wrong to me. And just, I didn't want to be in that situation. And I was told that I wouldn't be put in that situation. And I found myself there the same day. And when I asked about that, it was because the individual who was managing the case was too busy. So.
Sarah?
I think,
Oops,
you did. Oh,
sorry.
okay.
I'm like, juggling the, like,
I'm
fake
okay.
hand.
We're talking a lot about solutions right now, and I'm really irritated because, I mean, this kind of toxic culture is in sports and potentially theater, obviously, just, it has been going on for centuries or I don't know, decades or whatever. And like we, you know, I read your statement out loud today so I could really feel like what you were feeling. And it's like things that we have, most of us have lived before. And it's so frustrating that these coaches are, they know better. I mean, after the training, you know, like they need that training, but what do we have to do to men? Sorry, to men to make them get their hands off us and leave us alone. And so my issue is like, we're all solutions focused and you're going to leave and you're going to go to college. And like, you came forward and you're not the first person to have to tell your story and there's no changes. So like every person, every man, every woman, non-binary, whatever, has to take responsibility. This is this idea of collective responsibility. That usually is in a CIWP because it's the hardest issue to get right in a school, in the situation, in the setting. It's this collective responsibility. And the school needs to work on it. And I have this segues into, I have no CIWP to look at tonight to say like, wow, we should add collective responsibility in there. So I'm sorry for you and I'm angry and I want to be able to somehow offer you something this year. And I don't know what that looks like. And I'm not sure that this administration is able to provide that for you. But girl, burn it down and enjoy college. And I'm really sorry to say.
I was really looking forward to doing hurdles this year because as he mentioned, like a couple years ago was like my very first time with no training. I was looking forward to actually having like the same access that the boys team does to a like specific like hurdles coach. Although there were personality differences and there were people telling me I should quit at every turn because of how difficult it was. Just very conflicting messages. I was told how much like natural talent I had for it until I reported something, then suddenly this is not a place where I should be, and I was like transferred multiple times.
I think that's a logical time to bring up that Jones is also under investigation for Title IX and sex discrimination in the sports department. And it is not a coincidence that we have issues with Title IX and, you know, sexual harassment, sexual assault, and we also have Title IX issues in the sports department. And it's, do you want to go ahead, Lenny?
No,
Yeah. Oh, you have to do something with your sound, Lenny. One sec.
It might be on Lenny's side.
And is it Lenny or
It
should I,
might be Lenny's side because she is unmuted.
should I just try to make some noise here?
That's what she said.
Okay, yeah, I think it might be Lenny. Because my microphone works. Okay, I'm gonna go with William first and then,
I really don't have anything to say. No, I'm still listening to what other people have to say. I put my hand up because I already right now. I'm still listening.
Can I just, Cassie, if,
wait, did Lenny type something? No.
and really, if this would be helpful, Cassie just mentioned that you can request your investigative file. Would it be helpful for either Cassie or this LSC just to send you some steps on how to do that? I know Cassie put this in the link to the chat, but I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to just respond to the email that you sent earlier today with those steps.
That's fine. I can add them to this slide too for general interest. So, but we'll email them.
I'll take any level of closure that I can get at this point.
You want to go out and come back in, Lenny? No, okay. Okay. Other public participation comments? If not, we'll go on to approvals. Do we have a link there? So.
We'll move on. I believe there's anything else you want to talk about or have us talk about before we move on to any. Like, I want to make sure that you have all of the time to say what you want to say.
There's been so much that I could have said. It's just, it's the timing of it all. I find very interesting that this all occurred to me after like a coach left and was replaced. A different parent coach came in and behaved completely inappropriately, especially towards me. Just that was humiliating when he went through his son's complete dating history during practice. He would say things to the girls like, "Oh, you should take that off, like you look hot." Like it's just, there was a lot of inappropriate comments that he would make. And I like would walk away from practice just like humiliated. Like I don't know in what world that was appropriate, but that was one of the placeholder coaches we had for a period of time. And then it's interesting that this all happened to me when Coach Beebe went on his academic leave because he is still a college student that was pushed up to head coach because someone else left. Like this was all very thrown together. And it was interesting how we decided to have the co-ed teams, which I believe was ultimately best for the program overall. But making a co-ed team and not talking about any sort of policies, especially when it comes to the interaction of and who's responsible for who. Like to have the boys coach when I texted him on the Remind app, tell me like he corrected me where I was like, you were the grown adult who was responsible for everyone in that weight room, the total of which was less than 5 people, and yet you still are telling me you're not responsible. And then like his response to that was something along the lines of, actually, like I'm not head boys coach, I'm like the assistant or whatever. Like that's what you found relevant in all of that? I'm not your responsibility because I am female? Really? it's just, it's astounding, all of it.
And just for the record, on February 23rd, I did write an email to the administration that said that quoted, it said, please let me know what you're doing about this specific statement from Coach Beebe's letter. I simply cannot be at all places at all times. The girls had, and several had voiced concern for their safety and being left alone with the other interim assistant coach. So it's, people knew, okay?
Yeah,
That's
there
all I
was
wanna
a
say.
long period of time that was extremely awkward for all of us, where he was fully aware that the entire team was making complaints against him, but he still remained there because, oh, maybe there were procedures or processes in place. That was just, yikes. Like, we had girls quitting the team. They were dropping like flies because of how uncomfortable this man made us. And our only advocate throughout all of that was Coach Beebe. Coach Beebe was gone. So during this like month or two that this happened to me, I didn't have a coach. The coaches that I did have don't claim responsibility over me because I'm female. And when things happen right in front of them, I am the problem because I am distracting. I'm just not seeing the logic.
Yeah, to add to Sarah's, the email from Coach Beebe was also sent to the district basically right after we got that, and it went to OSP and OIG. And it is not acceptable that kids, students, young adults were being subjected to this and having this be a problem with not a sufficient response. Clearly, there was not a sufficient response. Really, we're failing to protect kids in this building.
I agree. We had made people aware previously that he was someone who would run with the boys team as a boys assistant coach, like in previous years. And he would go out of his way. Like, he knew that the girls team would be stripping down to their swimsuits to go jump in the lake during like an off day practice that was still supervised. He knew of this, and when he found out, he completely changed course to go with the girls. He watched us all swim and then ran back with us. That was interesting.
Thank you, Lily. And there is, you know, whatever students are willing to come forward with is still willing to, you know, document all of this, and we will fight to see some justice for you guys. It's not okay.
There was a separate occasion where my friends were aware of how uncomfortable I was. And that day, my friends were with me at practice. So we were all in the weight room. I was doing pull-ups, and then one of the boys who I'm speaking of but not naming came over to help me do assisted pull-ups. And at first I saw this as normal because he was following like proper procedure, holding me where he would if it was an assisted pull-up. But then the other boy that I spoke of came into the room. He beelined towards me, and the first thing he did was grab my ponytail like hard enough that I could look like I was just held there. I couldn't look down if I wanted to. And then the other boy, what he found appropriate in that moment was to spread my knees so that he could place his hips between mine. This happened in front of like a decent chunk, I would say about 15 members of the boys sprints team. And my two friends that came along with me to practice that day because they knew how unsafe I felt at all times because of these two individuals. So there I am, not able to let go of this bar, because if I let go of this bar while this boy is holding me, I will fall on my back. But I can't look at him because I'm being held back. So one of my friends actually got me out of that situation partway by smacking one of their hands away from my ponytail so that I can at least see what's happening to me. Because it's hard when there's so many things all at once in front of people. It's just, it was similar to the time that my legs were spread multiple times on the field after I had cut myself trying to get away from one of the boys trying to choke me with a sweaty headband. It was similar to that in the way where it was witnessed by many people. And when when the boy received a reaction the first time he spread my legs open, it was so positive that he did it again.
Lily, if I just may, I'm really sorry.
You're not the person that should be sorry. The people who should be sorry refuse to be.
I should be disqualified from running any sports.
I want you to,
anymore. Sorry.
I want you to know that It's a lot. It's overwhelming. And it sounds like that the school has to do something about it, and to your point, create these policies, procedures, concrete, and take concrete action. And I think one thing that I think has, and I'm not sure if you would agree, that's been a real, I think, a great step in the right direction is Coach B.
I agree completely.
And then I'm hoping that having a dedicated athletic director can truly address these concerns, these disparities, not just in the girls cross country, girls and boys cross country and track, but across the board. And I think I think that the LSC and the new LSC, this LSC, with working with the administrative leadership, has to take that real step forward.
Yeah, the only people I saw like taking any clear steps was Coach Beebe, and that is upon his return. He has been our one and only advocate in all of this. Like whenever we felt unsafe or just completely uncomfortable, we would go to him. He would actually do things about it. There was a period of time where he wouldn't be at distance practice. He would be with sprints because he knew of like the man that made us all uncomfortable. He made actual changes. He advocated for me, as you can see, sending messages to you guys and whoever else. It's just, I wish there were more people who cared as much as he does, and I wish that he was there when he couldn't be. There's just things like that. And it's sad knowing that I'm going to be leaving here, and it's likely that this will all be forgotten. A lot of you at this table will probably be reelected. Administration will be happy that I'm gone, I'm sure. It's been a headache for about 4 years now. It's been nice that Mr. Mitchell has cared. He feels like he failed me on a personal level, as he's told me. This is not the only OSB case that has not gone my way. It's not the only one that I didn't expect to go my way, because the reality of the situation is often bleak.
Yeah, most of us will not be back on the LSC, but we are still part of the school community, and we are adults, who feel responsible for these situations not being addressed. Thanks, and do reach out with and share like this slide of other people that know what they should report to, and the doing it as a collective, it will support all of you in the difficulties of doing it.
All of my teammates came to me after discovering that I had reported this, and then shared the email with the girls team. They came to me like expressing like how guilty they felt over the fact that they witnessed a lot of this and did nothing. And I told them, I'm like, it was never your responsibility. I'm like, yes, you could have gone above and beyond and not been a bystander, but it's also like, that wasn't your job to protect me. In my eyes, it was the coach's responsibility to pay attention. Like, if I am not your responsibility, as you say, because I'm a female and you are the boys coach, maybe control your own athletes. Maybe then we wouldn't have been here.
Also, I thought that the girls and boys coaches were being shared. Isn't that what was decided?
Not truly.
Coach Reed's
On paper.
The other question I had, Dr. Powers, was that is the athletic director, dedicated athletic director, really wasn't approved. We had talked about it in the initial budget for fiscal
No,
year.
we do have a dedicated athletic director. It's being paid for by CPS.
It is being paid for. Okay,
That, I've gotten nothing to contradict that at all.
okay. Bernie
I
just
haven't
said,
seen a dollar figure.
yeah,
yet,
he
but,
said he's heard of approval, but he doesn't have a position.
Yeah.
And I think what we don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Powers, whether the athletic director will also have teaching responsibilities.
He will. He'll have 2 class periods.
They will. 'Cause it could be.
I'm sorry.
They will, just in case it's a woman athletic.
Well, it's Mr.
Just-
Str- it's Coach Stroh.
Oh, it's, okay, you already know who it is, okay.
Has already been performing those duties as coach for set have stepped aside that semester. So we have somebody who can do that. We also have designated one of our, and again, this is specifically dealing with just athletic organizational aspects and so forth from the administrative side of things. And that is Ms. Gonzalez Torres as an assistant principal. She has extensive coaching experience and was very eager to take part in it. So she will be not necessarily for situations like you're talking about, Lily, but in other situations that involve organization and planning and so forth with regard to our athletics. So she'll be our contact person on the administrative team when it comes to the athletic programs.
Deborah?
I wanted to ask a question. It used to be that the athletic director was also the Title IX coordinator. Is that still the case, or have those responsibilities been split to two separate people? Because I think there's an inherent conflict of interest built into that.
Do I need to turn on my mic? No,
No.
it's over here. Okay. I don't think there is a conflict of interest, Deborah, and I think maybe that's part of our difficulty when we made the transition. And I'm going to follow up as soon as I can tomorrow on Title IX training, because the transitioning from one person to another may have caused that to drop between the cracks in terms of the school year.
Yeah, I think it was principals who were notified of that.
Yes, that is true.
Thanks for that, Deborah. Let me just read Lenny's comments. I'm sorry, Liliana, that this happened. Very frustrating to hear this happen to you. I believe you. How many young women need to be assaulted before we decide to do better?
I just wanted to say that you use like the language slip through the cracks so casually. You realize that then when there are cracks, you fix them. You don't wait until you see people falling through. We need you when we need you. We tell you what we need and when we need it. You're not as if you understand. You're not really hearing me. I'm sure all you're thinking about is when you can take your child off, when you can go home, when this meeting will end. For some of us, this is real. This has been my life for a very long time. Okay.
Again, I'm sorry what has happened to you. I'm sorry things did not work the way they should have worked. And all I can say is we're doing everything we can and are going to continue doing everything we can to correct that and make those changes.
Start thinking about prevention. Once harm has already been done upon somebody, you can't undo that. No one can, nothing. So the question is, why didn't you think about this in the beginning? What stopped you from talking to people like coaches, like the athletic director, for training when these coaches were brought in and under new circumstances that had never been broached upon, where there was a co-ed team?
We should have done more to prepare for that.
Done more? How about doing the bare minimum? Let's start with the bare minimum.
Thank you very much.
We thank you. I know it's a frustrating situation. Thank you.
Your anger is 100% justified.
I apologize for my tone and how it's directed, but
You do not need to tone police you on this one.
Just say you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting, but make sure, like, I just want Ellen to make sure you're okay. Only because it's boring. And I don't want it to feel like we're, as we move on, that we've forgotten what you have brought to us today, that's all.
Do we take a little break or should we do the approvals?
So everyone was, if you stop sharing it.
Okay, so Sarah, do you want to go through them?
We have 4 approvals. 2940 from Science for moving services, Science furniture relocation. Guess they're relocating. Dr. Farms are moving to a different part of the building.
It's part of the chemistry is being moved over to this building. biology over to take their spaces. But there's some of the original chemistry tables are extremely heavy,
Yeah.
kind of what we used to call slate, but it's not some composite material. They have to be dismantled, carried over, and that is beyond the custodian's responsibilities. They moved all the other furniture, but they cannot handle anything above a certain weight.
That's that one, and then we have, so Mr. Brennan and I met, we had been talking about facility projects. Well, there is money to do this facility project this year. This is to replace the blinds in the north building. It's for rooms 400 to 407, so maybe the fourth floor on the.
We're doing a floor by floor in that building because we can't spend over a certain amount with a certain vendor. And we're trying to maintain consistency as we go through that building. So we've already covered second, third, this will be fourth, and we have only fifth and sixth remaining.
Okay, so that's that one. Theater supplies, 493467, and the list is attached. It's very extensive. And then the last one is for water polo. It's a scores table for 378238. For water. And that is from the water polo line. So any other questions on those? If not, I'll make a motion to approve the 4 items as discussed. You have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Andrade?
Yeah.
Did Kim ever come?
No.
Okay. Clancy?
Yay.
Cresswell?
Yay.
Hilbrands?
Yay.
Kurt?
Yay.
Leon?
Yes.
Mana Hoppenworth? Okay, thanks. Yes, Martin Sec.
Yes.
Vandevar?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes,
Zen?
Yes.
Okay. We have no budget transfers for fundraisers or facility usage. There'll be a fundraiser from Friends of Jones for our next meeting, correct? All right, I'm done.
Okay, so we had 2 committee meetings, so we're gonna have our committee reports tonight. Roberto, do you wanna take it away on equity?
Sure, we had our final meeting last week, I think. And this was to wrap up our discussion on the Jones parity, sports parity. And so we took a lot of feedback since January of 2022 up to this point. And what we did was we collected a lot of questions and thoughts from members on the equity committee, as well as folks who participated during the public participation. And we've compiled all those questions into a document. And I want to just give credit to Radaya and Laura for putting that information together. It's on the drive. We just, I asked Sarah to put it on the drive today, so I'm sorry for the last minute notice and not giving the members on this LSC an opportunity to review that, as well as a template of a survey to get at some of these questions regarding the parity or disparity issues between the boys and girls sports team. So we are suggesting or recommending that the administrative leadership team and the new LLC to take a look at that, and with the athletic director, and decide how to best use that information so we can identify concrete issues, potential problems within the sports at Jones, and then addressing them. So that's really my update. I just want to say thanks to the members on the equity committee for their invaluable commitments and just their can-do attitude and positive attitude of just trying to support the school, trying to address certain things that have come up in the past 2 years as a member of the equity committee, as a member of this LSC. So we just want to forward that on to Dr. Powers, and Mr. Mitchell attended that meeting. And so he's aware of these discussions. And we've just put it together in one document in a survey for you all to take a look at.
We'll make good use of that during our summer project.
And then the only other thing that I want to mention that came up during the equity committee is one of our student representatives, Debbie. I think that's how, I'm sorry, Debbie. But she brought up a concern that the BSU brought up. And one of that was, unfortunately, the recent gun violence that has happened in the within the month, with the most recent tragic event in Texas. They brought up concern that that they would have appreciated if there was acknowledgement from the school community, from teachers, administrative leadership about the violence that happened at the supermarket where several individuals were killed. They felt that there are a lot of students, family members who work in a grocery store, and that had a significant impact on them and wasn't necessarily acknowledged. And Mr. Mitchell understood that. He acknowledged that there's a lot, unfortunately, there's a lot going on in our society. But yeah, but they just felt that that wasn't being heard. So.
Thanks, Roberto. Do we have questions or comments? Online or here?
And is this your last equity meeting of the year then?
That is. So it is the last meeting, and then the new LSC will determine whether they want to move forward with either of the three committees that have been established by this LSC. So I invited all of the new LSC members to our final equity meeting last week. Unfortunately, many of them couldn't attend, but they sent their they sent me a message just saying that they hope that they'll look at the committee and moving forward, decide how they're going to manage the equity committee at least.
Well, thank you so much for all the work you've done and for, putting together a great committee and being welcoming to people. And, like, it really says something of the committee that it was so large and that there's like actual, just community members from, the school who did a bunch of actual work for this as a volunteer position and, even as not as elected LSC members. And the school has benefited from that, and it's really, and I think also, I see people posting, all the time saying, how do you create a committee like this for your LSC? And so, this is a great model now for people on how to do it and what it can look like. So, great job.
Thank you, Cassie. And I couldn't do this alone. So there were a lot of people involved. The members, including Deborah, Violetta, who have been involved and actively involved, including our student representative, Debbie, and then other members from the community who have just wanted to really be engaged and support the school and improve the school culture, and then folks from within the school community. So it does take, I believe it takes an individual and collective responsibility to move forward. And then Mr. Mitchell I believe he has attended the majority, maybe he might have missed one or two because of vacation, but he's been there to listen and take back our suggestions and recommendations to see how they can incorporate those things here.
Thank you.
So next, we have a committee report from Health and Safety, and Lenny, I'm looking to hear from you. I'm gonna try again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Health and Safety Committee was, they met for the 23rd. And I will just read this. end of year recommendations report. If you can hear me okay. Okay. The Health and Safety Committee formed in 2021 with the Safety Committee in 2020, which was formed to discuss the existence of SROs at Jones in addition to other safety concerns. Its purpose is to identify issues and to research and make recommendations to ensure safe, supportive, and secure school environment for Jones students. The Health and Safety Committee includes LSC members, teachers, parents, guardians, community members, and like the Equity Committee. I think it's very useful. We've all agreed that it's a very useful place for people to come together to talk about issues concerning so many everyday things that happen at Jones in a way that is tied with the LSC. So in 2022, we adopted an anti-racist values statement. Reads, every single action of this Health and Safety Committee is motivated in part towards dismantling white supremacy culture to achieve justice for all. And we do this through a racial equity-centered, trauma-informed approach. We had several successes throughout the years, including in response to an uprising in anti-Asian hate, provided bystander intervention training through Asian Americans Advanced Justice in April 21. We coordinated with the Equity Committee, prioritized student voice, that passed a new dress code in 2022, and that was very much student-led. And then thanks to the teacher and chair of the committee, Ms. Logan, we provided detailed monthly pandemic mitigation updates, including the distribution of over 4,000 N95 masks by the National Honor Society, phone banks to unvaccinated seniors, and hand 5 masks to help ensure the safety of all at the graduation event as our COVID numbers spike once again. And also they're talking to us about establishing a vaccination clinic at Jones. I wanted to shout out to Mr. Mitchell, who has provided monthly updates on the whole school safety plan, which includes physical safety, emotional safety, and relationship trust, all the things that we were talking about today. We have been trying to get progress on the Culture and Climate Department, which is coordinated by Mr. Pablo Lopez. And we hope to hear more about that department at the beginning of this year. Our recommendation is to continue building off the work that's been done through this committee, through the approach that we have advocated for, which is a trauma-informed approach. And think about this as I'm reflecting on what Liliana shared with us today. And unfortunately, this is not the first time this LSC has heard a story about sexual misconduct Jones. So I do hope that we could find ways to work together and not forget about those who turn themselves inside out to point to the violence that's happening to our young women. We want to be an institution that turns out whole human beings, and without the help of everybody, including people who we want to hire for the oversee department, until we make a real effort to explain what our values are, so that new people, when they come in, understand how to increase that kind of behavior instead of a culture of harm. This is what we have to do together. So in addition to all of the COVID updates that we've been providing through the health and safety team, we also want to address 3 big buckets. One, culture at Jones. We need to celebrate the diversity of Jones. And we have to listen and learn from the student and teacher voices, especially ones who have stepped forward to tell their stories in a public space like this. I hope that we should try to create a culture in which they do not have to do this. We need to prioritize transparency. We need to research and participate in more anti-racism trainings, more bystander trainings. Yes. We need to create an environment where we want to know each other and we want to reach out to each other, even though we're very, very busy in all the little details of the things that we need to do to keep Jones running. I think that being a human being and reaching out to a person and expressing concern and empathy does not take a lot of training. It just takes a decision to be that kind of person, leadership. We recommend that, community, parents, teachers, students learn about the many different cultural student groups at Jones and to engage in real time to build actual opportunities to get to know each other so that we can create a culture of empathy where we have justice and accountability. And that would include known and reliable processes for reporting things like sexual harassment and discrimination. People need to not feel like they're alone at Jones anytime. And that means it doesn't matter if you are not a straight student and have never missed a day at Jones, that you still matter. If you need accommodations, you still matter. If you have experienced harm, you still matter. You are not discarded. Two, we want to keep up the recognition that we must be ADA compliant and we must address the accessibility at Jones, which means a regular inclusion of updates and agendas so that all students feel safe and healthy at Jones no matter what their ability is. And then three, continue building our community at Jones, including what is happening on social media. Even though the district does not have any district-wide standards, Jones still exists as a community, and people are creating relationships online. So how are we addressing that? So regarding a whole school safety plan to continue to address physical safety, emotional safety, and relational trust at Jones, along with new culture and climate coordinator, we're very interested in how this is going to work. And we need to bring in as many people as possible to help create this document or standard, whatever that might look like, on how to behave on social media. We need to advance the community-wide conversation to come to a better understanding of what is and what is not acceptable behavior online, and then recreate that person, right? We need to create a process to report harm for accountability and restorative justice. We should not have to wait for someone to impose a standard on us. We should know how to, for instance, behave if something terrible happens, and how all of us are, if we know about something, are basically bystanders. So how do we move forward here together? I want to thank everybody who helped to build up this committee, including Rachel Zen and Cynthia Logan, Daniel Andrade, Dr. Plunkett, who was there early on, Violet also, and every person who contributed to conversations, including Deborah Land. And I do hope that the next LSC continues on with this work, because it is an opportunity to bring other people into the conversations here at the LSC. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lenny. Any other questions for Lenny on her report or recommendations? Rachel?
Hi everyone. Don't have COVID, but I have a sinus infection, so I'm gonna stay off camera. But I just wanted to add to what Lenny said, just something that kind of ties the three recommendations together, and something that was brought up a little bit ago about the violence in communities across the country. I just think the continuation of this committee is of the utmost importance, because as we know now, violence is not a special event. it happens constantly. And schools are not immune to that. And so I hope, especially with the social media guide that Mr. Lopez has a vision for, I really am inspired by that. And I hope that this committee or some other group can be the venue to explore what that might look like. Because one of the things that ties together a lot of these reports of harm is social media. And it's really hard to talk about because you have to kind of be on social media and not talking to other people to witness it. Um, so I would say just a recommendation as a member of the committee is to focus on that in the future and how that can kind of be addressed going forward.
Thanks, Rachel. And Lenny, I think this is your last committee meeting as well, right? So I wanted to give you a big thank you for stepping up. Rachel left big shoes to fill leading this committee, and we really appreciate your service. And Ms. Logan also, I think has done a ton to support this committee, so that's been super helpful. And a shout out to Daniel for serving on this committee since now like a year and a half. So yes, but it's crucial to have a chair who will carry stuff out. So really appreciate that. Okay. So the other two items for tonight, the first one we have is the CIWP. CPS has asked LSCs to approve it again, even though it's not a full starting over of a 2-year CIWP cycle. So go ahead, Dr. Powers.
All I can say is that we have the plan in place, and my understanding is from CPS that because they're looking toward a different structure, I guess you might say, or different approach to this type of planning, has carried this over for a 3rd year rather than the normal 2-year cycle. So that has been, we will continue with that. We'll continue also tweaking it as we go along and bringing it up to date and reporting back on that as well. So right now, the only task we have is to approve it for the continuation for the 3rd year. And just as we did this time, at this time, essentially last year. And by that time, we will, during the coming school year, we'll learn more in terms of what CPS is asking for, what type of template we're working with, and so forth. This is the second type of, since I've been here, second type of planning instrument that we have had. We had the SIPA, SIPPA, I think it was, which was a long-term planning process. Not long-term, but 2-year cycle, I think was for that as well. So we're waiting for that, and we'll see what happens and how we can translate our goals into the new cycle and how that is to be put into place.
So Deborah had a question in the chat asking about the questions that we asked in October about the CIWP. I don't believe we received any answers to those. I don't think we've ever received a list of who's on the CIWP team.
I don't know whether you did or did not receive that.
Well, yeah, I'll just say,
You
no
did
one
not?
knows who's on the
Okay.
CIWP team, and I
Okay.
don't think we do in the fall as well, so I don't think that team exists. Or if it does, they're meeting in secret. So, and I understand that, yes, this is gonna change a year from now, but we only received like a partial update in October anyway. Our follow-up questions were not answered. And presumably someone picked those 4 priorities that are in the plan because they're priorities and
There was a
wanted to
team of
carry
people who
out
created it,
things to
yes.
achieve those things. And so it's, yeah, I would think that we'd still have gotten some updates. Go ahead, Bill.
This is the 2020 to 2022 plan, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so CPS wants us to approve it for another year because they're changing the school quality rating system and probably also because of COVID, and they also have like incomplete test data from the last couple of years. And so if you're, you know, how you're measuring these goals has changed, things are kind of, you know, uncertain.
I was also gonna ask, is this the plan, there's Jones College Prep, CPS keeps a website of high schools, and on the website, you can actually download the CIWP plan with what appears to be a list of all the people on the team.
Yeah,
I don't know
most
if
of,
that's the
like
right
many
thing.
of those parents are gone. So that was the team that created the plan 2 years ago, but
Okay.
I don't think we've seen any updates from that. And
Okay.
like, I know that the parents on there, I think they've actually like had children who graduated and are not there anymore. And
That's the team that created the plan itself. So the only changes that have taken place have been minor changes, and in fact, I'm not even familiar with all of them. I don't think there was really very much done in terms of making changes during that time. Part of it was because we were waiting to see what would happen with regard to the next cycle. Now we know that the next cycle is to be, or this cycle is to be continued for one more year.
Sarah?
The CIWP is a living document that can be updated as frequently as the school desires. And my experience is that the CIWP team is updated and evolves annually or semi-annually, depending on how high your turnover is. And the LSC and the school community receives 2 annual updates, one in the fall, one in the spring, that discusses the either 3, maybe 4 priorities in the CIWP, including any data that you have or do not have yet. And so the last update we received was in October, and we had a list of questions. Also on May 10th, we discussed this very same thing. So it's a little deja vu. And we were expecting that Dr. Plunkett would come, and at least if she was not able to be here, to provide us with the most recent copy of the CIWP and any data that she has thus far and any conclusions that she has made. And then also a conversation about, are these the right 4 priorities still? Or do we need to add priorities about collective responsibility and things like that? And so if we're voting, I'm just gonna be very transparent. I'm gonna vote no. I have nothing to vote on. And if we don't want to approve it, I don't know what happens. It's supposed to be approved by June 10th. It's a waste of time that we're here. And I mean, Lily's wasn't a waste of time, but I thought we were meeting for the CIWP. I had requested the documents within 48 hours. I didn't hear anything. This is not normal, but this is not how a school operates. With respect to this document, the budget is always tied to CIWP. If you have to show that it doesn't need funding. Not everything in a CIWP needs funding. But you at least have to have that conversation. I don't know what's happening. I'm just
Yeah, I mean,
frustrated.
budget is a set of priorities, and in a public school in Chicago, your set of priorities should be guided by those formal priorities that you've approved as an LSC. And if you need to tweak things, then you tweak things, and then you look at them and say like, oh, have we actually been prioritizing these things? Have we made progress? Are these the right set? And then you change them. And, you know, as you hear updated things from your school community about problems and issues that need to be solved, rather than saying, hey, maybe a year from now, we'll think about what our priorities are and then we'll address them. And
Well, we do have our priorities, and they are there in the current document, which is
Well,
there for anybody to
I
see.
know, well, have we done an update? We're supposed to get 2 updates a year. In a year and a half, we've gotten 1 update and we get a lot of questions about it and we didn't get any answers. So I think it's a bit of a stretch to say anyone can see it. The document is not a living document. It is a very dead document. That document has not been alive for 2 years. And it doesn't look like it's gonna have a great next 12 months. So
Or
I
just say,
hope the next LSE takes their responsibility seriously and looks at this stuff. I mean, it's literally in the school code. It's literally in your contract that this is how the school is supposed to work. And it would be one thing if, like, you know, the things were running well, but clearly there's huge issues that we're hearing about again and again. And a school leader should prioritize some stuff and then say, hey, this is actually a plan and this is how we're going to tackle it. And instead we've gotten, we've done equity initiative priorities. We haven't tackled those. You can see it. We've taken a running record for the last 12 months. And those haven't been tackled either. And that's a real problem, We have 3 teachers of color leaving. Where's our plan for retention of teachers of color? Oh, that's right. It doesn't exist. Why is that not in the CIWP? Oh, we don't know because we've never talked about the CIWP or updated. So that's just where we are. Yeah, Lenny was holding that about holding at least 2 public meetings to present the proposed CIWP and budget. And yeah, we're just not taking this stuff seriously at all. Wait, Sarah, do you want to go again? Is that
No, sorry.
Roberto?
So I just want to, for the new LSC and the administrative leadership team, what's important to me and what I've heard from families and what's important to them moving forward, when you are working, when the new CIWP team is created and the new LSC takes their seat, I'd like everyone to emphasize several things. One is the college application process and financial aid process for our undocumented students, our first generation students, our students who are coming from communities with limited resources. That has to be an emphasis. And that has to be something that the school community has to drive. There were 2 Jones Blueprint articles, Jittery Juniors and Common App Praise. And it was clear a lot of the students felt pressure and a lot of stress, and it was a challenge to navigate the college application process as well as the financial aid process. So I think there has to be a strong emphasis on that. And I would encourage everyone here and those who are viewing this to read those 2 articles because they are important. And I think they reflect the experiences of some of our students who may not have the resources to hire a tutor, to hire a college essay professional to help them walk through the application. And I think as we discussed at the other LSE meeting, we are a college preparatory school. So I think that's important, identifying those needs. And then the other part of that is part of that is also preparing our students to take these high stakes college entrance exams. And making sure that we're continuing to identify students who would benefit from those services. And I appreciate Dr. Powers, your response to the email question regarding the internal accounts and maintaining those 2 budget lines. So building off of that and building off of the success, I think the success from academic approach, easing some of that stress and tension. So, and then recruiting and hiring and retaining our teachers of color and supporting them fully and empowering them. That's important. And then continuing to build on and using whatever resources are available, including principal discretion, to make sure that we're building on the diversity of the school and that we're reflective of the city of Chicago and this country. So using those tools, I want to see that. Like there's a proactive approach to making sure that we're maintaining the balance of our demographics, our social economic status, our ethnicity, the ethnic body, the student group. Those are important. And I hope that the CIWP, the new LSC, Dr. Powers, your leadership and your team's leadership really take heed to those things and really implement them and incorporate them into the CIWP.
Those would be excellent additions to the CIWP.
And then finally, in addition to that, it's just, we've talked about this at length,
and even before I joined the LSC, is narrowing the gap between the SAT scores, ACT scores, and the GPA of our Black and Latinx students and their counterparts, the white and Asian students. And I've provided that data several times through the University of Chicago's 2 and 3 project. So that's what I'm hoping. And I would hope that you would agree that those are good. And it sounds like those are good concrete actionable things to include in the CIW.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Thanks, Roberto. Yeah, so it's, I know they'd be maybe changing things around in the bureaucracy, et cetera, but, currently, it's set up like, what's your area of critical need? What's your root cause? And then what's your strategy to address that? And I mean, you can add priorities from quality and character of school life. And I think, that has been an issue that we've heard about again and again: physical and emotional safety, supportive and equitable approaches to discipline. Right now, the 4 areas of critical need, I don't think any of them are really related to the college admissions and applications issues, and that should be there. Like, I was hoping tonight, after the discussion last, 2 weeks ago, that we come in and say like, oh, hey, actually, let's look at this plan and add this area of critical need or replace one of these other ones that no one's working on anyway. And instead we have not. So I just want to say that is a real problem, because now our next item on the agenda is to vote on the budget, and like last year, are we going to vote and say, hey, let's spend this money on this thing? And once again, there's no plan. And at least it was in the CIWP, someone would say, hey, there's your root cause. Or how are you going to address this? And what is going to be your strategy to address this area of critical need? Somewhere, someone would write down how they were going to do it. And then they would take that money that we say, hey, spend it on that. And they would do that. And like, this is super basic, as Sarah said, and it really is something that happens at our schools. And I don't know why it's not happening here. Or maybe I do, but I would like to see it fixed. It's just not okay how things are going like this, It's really not okay. And I hope the next body that's been elected to hold you to account on these things actually does, and does not just rubber stamp for another 2 years, because that is not okay for the students who are coming and telling us what their areas of critical need are.
The absence of some of these things in the current CIWP does not mean the absence of those things as far as things we're trying to accomplish, plans we're making, and things that we're trying to put into place. But they do need to be included in the CIWP, and that will be one of the tasks that we will have as a rewrite as we prepare for the next round of it. But we can do that even prior to knowing the exact formatting and so forth.
I think you can do it right now. I mean, strategy 4, develop meaningful, focused, consistent whole staff professional development meetings, schedule, make a clear organized bank of protocols and resources available to all teachers, emphasize professional development on equity. That we did. But I mean, now the equity work has to go to the next level. That's why this is a living document. That needs to be updated. That strategy, some of it has been done. And so I'm not sure if the organized bank of protocols and resources has been made available to teachers. Only Ellen could say that, but the amount of work that I put into the minutes, I could, put into the CIWP instead. Like someone can work on this. I don't know if you have 3 APs. People are dying for APs right now. There's like no money, and have somebody work on this. If this LSC couldn't make this happen, no LSC can make it happen.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. What we will do is to take some of these recommendations, and again, I agree with you. It's time to update it. It's just we've not had the means and the time to do so. As was demonstrated in some of the discussions we had earlier, every member of this administrative team is up to their eyeballs in work. And as much as somebody seems to think a team of 4 administrators for a school of 2,000 is somehow excessive. That is beyond below the norm outside of CPS. I had 1,200 students at a school with 4 members of the administrative team. And here we have almost 2,000. That is not to say that we need more people. We just need the time and effort to be able to accomplish some of these things. And things keep coming at us at the same time. So not trying to be defensive, but at the same time, these are things that we're going to have to prioritize, and we are prioritizing. And if they need to be ensconced in the CIWP, they will be. And then they'll take whatever form the new one comes about later next school year.
Deborah, do you want to go?
Sure. So basically, from what I can see and what's been presented tonight, there is no CIWP to approve. If we want to take a vote, I will have to vote no, because I asked a lot of questions last year and got no response. The administration doesn't seem to have made this a priority. Before my family came to Jones, I worked with 4 other CPS principals, and they did this twice a year, every year, without fail. It is part of the communication between the administration and the school community, and it hasn't happened but once. And so I guess there's nothing to vote on tonight. So this is why we called this meeting, and maybe I thought we made that clear when we had our last meeting, that that was the purpose of the special meeting, was that we would have to approve the CIWP. We didn't need this meeting. Other than to listen to Liliana, we didn't need this meeting. This isn't what we signed up for tonight. We were expecting a presentation that didn't happen. So there's nothing to vote on.
Well, you actually do have CIWP to vote on.
I'm not going to vote yes. I will vote no then.
It's your choice.
Yeah, I think that's fine. If someone's take a motion to approve the CIP as it is currently written.
I'll make
the most
a
updated
motion.
version.
I'd like to make just,
Yeah, go ahead.
so for the new LSC, I think it's also important to hold each other accountable, and for the CIWP team to hold each other accountable to make sure that we're addressing a lot of the needs and concerns and issues that have been surfaced in the 2 years that I've sat on this LSC. And I think part of that is just reflecting a little bit more here, is also transforming the bias-based harm, making sure that students who have been harmed have reported sexual misconduct or harassment, that's included in the CWIP, and how those things are going to be addressed to ensure that there are procedures and policies and concrete actions in place to address those students' concerns. That's important to be in the CIWP, and as well as the sports, addressing some of the sports parity disparity issues that have been raised up. We've provided that information. So, I think the next LSC has to move forward with that.
I think that to add to that list, the racial equity assessment from Davis Squared that, cost $15,000. I think it had a lot of, very basic recommendations, and the idea that to respond to that, you just create committees and you don't actually set the priorities and make that clear, and also look at the 4 priorities that you set in August 2020 and say, oh, did we achieve those? What have we done on those? And how are we adjusting those? And how did those not make it into the CIWP? Like, how many sets of priorities do we have? And let's have an overall thing, like what are the actual goals of this? You really need that. It's really.
I don't disagree with you. At the same time, we just have not been able to pull all that together, given all the other things that are going on in this school and our school community. And we will work on that. We will pull it together. We will revise it. We'll reconstitute the CIWP committee, the team for that, and review it starting as soon as we can. And that way we will have in place the goals and the things that we're trying to accomplish when we actually get the new template, so we don't just start from scratch.
Can I have a point of clarification? So just, if the vote today would be this one, 2020 to 2022 CIWP, it would be to carry this over for 1 more year, right?
Yeah, basically like approve that
Okay.
as it stands.
Okay. I just want to say, I understand how you said that administration has a lot of work. And I also appreciate the fact that you say that even though it's not in the plan, it's happening. But like everyone else here, I just really want to echo in the future, like you say, I really hope you are going to work on it and put what you are currently doing into the CWP to let it be known that it's happening and to hopefully make it better, you know. But I do appreciate that, you know, you're trying. But just try very well.
I wanted to briefly answer a question Sarah had earlier about resources. So actually, I was just like paging through CIWP slide deck from the fall. So there, in fall 2020, during Teacher Zero Week, like the week before students attend, we received some professional development from MICVA Challenge regarding like student engagement in civics and, you know, MICVA, they're a really great organization. So I did just search and I do have access to some of those activities. I'm not sure if as our staff has changed in the past couple of years, if everybody who's new has access to that. I will acknowledge I have not used those lessons this school year in the way that I did last school year. So I think awareness is a piece that like is maybe a missing piece of communication to remind like, hey, we have these lessons. They were designed back when we were remote largely. So the lessons, each one has a folder that says synchronous and asynchronous, and they were intended for those Eagle days that we had last school year. But again, I think that just like some resources are in various places, but we don't necessarily know where they are or what they are, and that piece would be really helpful. And again, I was there for that training, and I still forgot about those resources. So just to answer your question from earlier.
Thanks, Ellen. Alba?
I have two questions. One's to Dr. Powers and one is just for whoever can answer it. First one is Dr. Powers, you mentioned, sorry, you said, I think you said that we will you will reconstitute the team and update the plan as soon as possible. And like, I just want to know, do you have like a general timeline on that? Like, what does that look like?
We could start planning for it during the summer, although our summer's a little bit shorter this year. And then try to have that in place by the fall, where we can actually have the team work together, at least create the basics of it, not knowing what it's supposed to look like structurally. In other words, the goal setting portions of it, and what stands behind the goal setting, is something that can be done regardless of what format we're called upon to do. But at this particular time, we don't have any more information on that other than this will be the last year of the current way it's done. And then it will give us a chance then to work on the content and make the content fit whatever the formatting is.
Thank you. My other question to anyone who can answer it is, what happens if we don't extend this plan?
I mean, I think it's somewhat of a symbolic vote, and you know, we'll not check the box that we approve the LSC when we fill out the paperwork which is due budget time.
Thank you.
Lenny?
Yeah, I guess what concerns me is that there's a budget capacity of CIWP, and yes or no?
This one, not so much. Like, if you read through the priorities, is that just saying budget implications?
Oh, I mean, we voted on the budget last year without any specific tie into the CIWP, and so it's certainly not good practice. But you know, I guess we will do the best we can. But you know, deciding on the internal accounts budget as it's presented tonight. Ellen?
So I actually had a related question. I was looking through my email to see if we had communication about the MTSS team. And I know in the fall of this past school year, there was, Dr. Plunkett sent an email asking for interest. I believe that there was an MTSS team meeting that 0 week, because I think I was holding a meeting at the same time, also in the library. And so in that email, it was communicated that members of this team would be meeting outside of school hours and receiving payments like via, through the OST funds. I don't know if that ended up happening, so that Lenny's question about the budget kind of jogged my brain about that question as well. So I don't know if anybody has information about that, whether the MTSS team met throughout the school year, and if so, is that like, was that funding provided for those members?
There were regular MTSS meetings scheduled on a weekly basis. I do not know how frequently those meetings were held.
I have that from the principal evaluation.
Deborah, to your question of who's on the team, I am not 100% aware. I believe the counseling department was on the team. That's
The representative at least, yeah.
okay. I wasn't sure if it was every single member, because that first meeting, I think I saw every single counselor walk into the room. I don't know enough.
Sorry, what does MTSS stand for?
Multi-tier systems of support. So the idea is that if a student is, for example, like sometimes if there's chronic absenteeism or if grades are slipping, you might get concerned about a student. Like as a teacher, I would like notice, oh, this is like uncharacteristic. Does the student need more support in whatever way to help like address kind of like the symptoms of potential root causes? So again, the mentor program that I run is a form of MTSS support, where it's like matching up a student one-on-one with an adult, like a teacher, to help build academic skills. So that's just one example.
Thank you so much.
And in addition to that, starting at the beginning of the second semester, utilizing data from the first semester, especially semester grades, but also first quarter grades, we initiated through the ACLAB process, having teachers meet with specifically students that are identified as academically in trouble based on the grades and other factors as well. And then report on the progress that they had made there. But that continued on into that was certainly for the third quarter and continued on into the fourth quarter. And we'll be continuing next year with mentoring program as well, as Ms. Martin's talked about.
Go ahead, Danny.
I know on this little roster of who's on the team, I know it's outdated, but it says who has access and who doesn't. And the only ones who have access to the plan, I guess, to edit it are Dr. Plunkett and you. Would it be helpful to give more people access? Because I know you said you are up to the eyeballs with Word. Would it be worthwhile to expand that access to have multiple people be able to edit it? So like Ms. Ma said, go in there, change a few things and keep it a live document?
Well, the whole purpose of having a team to develop it is to reach, consensus on things in terms of making sure these are the goals, this is how we're going to pursue them and so forth, and then enter that into the system. So I don't think we can have multiple people editing, as it goes along. It's just that what we should have is multiple discussions of it, ongoing discussion of it, reporting back to the LSC, and then making those changes as we adjust as we go along. But I think what we're going to be looking at the beginning of this coming school year is major overhaul of the whole thing. And right now, all we're looking at is one more year of the current plan, which will not stay unchanged once the school year starts.
Go ahead.
I two questions. So, Dr. Powers, you mentioned you're hoping for like continuous discussion and update. I guess my first question would be, how can the LSC support you in continuously updating if, I think that's something that LSC would like to see. And so my question is like, how can we support you in doing that? Because it's the way you say like the administrative team has a lot of work on that plate. Like, of course, I totally understand that. So I guess my perspective is like, how can we support you? Yeah, that's my first question.
Okay. Well, I don't know that there's anything the LSC can do other than to, participate in the process, especially once we get the ball rolling with a major rewrite, and have a crossover of membership, perhaps members of the LSC will wish to participate on the actual CIWP developing team, planning team. So it's definitely something that is going to need to be done. It's going to be a major lift as we start into the new school year.
Roberta, do you want to go on?
I think William had two
Oh,
questions.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I guess my second question, you mentioned getting started over the summer. Is there anything, getting sort of updating this plan and revising over the summer? Is there anything we can do to move that timeline up, or is that?
No, really what we'd be doing over the summer is setting up the process, pulling a team together and so forth. The work's really not going to be able to be done before the 15th of August when the faculty and staff come back, other than to outline the major, outline some of the major goals that we're identifying. But as far as trying to convene a team to do this, that's probably going to have to wait until the school year starts. For one thing, it involves a lot of faculty members as well.
Roberta?
So I was wondering if it makes sense, and I would like to hear from anyone, if it makes sense to defer this to the incoming LSC at the annual for them to make a decision whether to go ahead and vote on this, or if there are modifications, or to consider everything that has been discussed and have them provide some input or feedback on like how the school can modify or improve or build on this CIWP, or as you say, overhaul it. I'm wondering if it makes sense to just defer this for them at their annual organizational meeting to take a look at this, and perhaps by that time you might have some additional information that you can provide them to consider. And yeah, since it sounds like there isn't a consequence at this point if we vote yes or no. If we vote no, right? Is there a consequence?
CPS wants a vote on this by June 10th. So I think we should hold a vote. If it fails, it fails. I think we're just basically checking that box. Someone wants to make a motion on the current LSC, if we can, or on the current CIWP, and then we'll hold a vote and we can record that. And then Deborah, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think we're kind of running out of things to talk about this. I think we should just go ahead and take a vote because we have no new information. In good faith, several LSC members made real thoughtful attempts to provide input and to ask questions in October, and that went nowhere. And so I don't see any value in deferring. I think if we vote yes or no, then we vote. And then what happens after that is, of course, up to the next LSC. But we've made a good faith effort. I can't tell you how many hours I spent with the document that Dr. Plunkett presented and really made thoughtful input and thoughtful questions. And I got nothing, not even an acknowledgement that it had been received. So I'm ready to vote. I'm ready to move on. I think we're running out of things to talk about.
Yeah, it is a living document. The next LSC can, to approve it, tweak it or whatever before the 3-year setup.
And that's not unprecedented. I can recall on a couple of occasions in the past where we did not get to a point where we could finalize something and we carried it over to the next cycle or the beginning of the next cycle.
Sorry.
We'll leave it last.
Final question, and then I promise I'll be quiet. Again, I'm looking at the list of the team here, and it's principals, it's department leaders, it's parents, it's teachers. And I guess my question is, when the CIWP is revised in the fall, will you make an effort to include students in the revision? And how is that going to happen? Or who's going to represent students in these discussions?
Right. And frankly, we have in the past, but unfortunately, because of conflicts of time and everything else, it was difficult for students to commit to the amount of time necessary. And we lost some of them along the way, which is understandable. We lost some other adult representatives as well. So yeah, definitely. And that'll be determined, we'll start the discussion so we can determine. First step is really going to be who our team is going to be and who it's going to represent. And this is where we want to make sure we have as broad a representation as possible. But it has to be a manageable working team. You can't have for example, a CWIP team of 25 or 30 people. It's more likely going to be 10, 11, 12, or possibly fewer, depending on the way it's gone, the composition of it, excuse me.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to hold a motion on our.
Okay, I make a motion to reapprove the 2020-2022 CIWP.
Second,
Andrade.
Abstain.
Clancy.
Abstain.
Cresswell.
No.
Mowbray.
Okay.
Kurt.
Abstain.
Lance.
No.
Anna Hoppenwood.
No.
No. Martin Sec. No. And Javar.
Abstain.
Towers.
yes.
Zen. Ben?
No.
I'll send you the tally if you need it for the.
Thanks.
Can I suggest we take a break before we do this next?
Yeah, we can take a little break and
Just,
then it's
I
just
can be really quick.
yes. Okay, everyone
Fastest.
at ease for maximum 5, but aim for 3.
Okay.
And we'll reconvene at 8:13.
Cassie, sign these things.
Yes, thanks.
No, that's fine. You're not muted, but.
Just as a heads up, to the 3 of you here, I will have to leave in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Cassie, how long do you anticipate our
This
next piece of
budget,
business would be?
I don't know. I don't think there's tons of new things to.
Shouldn't be, I was
So-
pretty well discussed
Yeah,
last
so we should
time.
be close to done.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know Sarah said like 2 slides are updated, so I looked at those.
Just approving the budget.
Yeah, but we did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if I need to see a few minutes later, that's okay.
And you got my notes in terms of the $225,000
Yeah.
segments.
I feel, Sarah sent that around.
I think we have a pretty clear idea of how we can utilize those funds. It'll provide us with seed funds. In fact, it could even go further than that in terms of covering the costs of some things.
The 225,000 we're talking about that's has been designated for the college and test prep.
I know, I don't think I believe it.
Should we, I know she has to go to 8:30, but do you
Yeah.
want to do this quick?
Approach.
Probably not gonna be academic approach cost.
Yeah, they were
Because
really
that was
close.
$100,000.
Yeah.
Instead, what
At the end.
what Caitlin and Yanni are working on are essentially an organic approach within, a lot of it already exists within math and within English. And building upon that, and then spinning that out as the year goes by to where you're actually holding sessions with students. Yanni has done it, and other people have as
Like the
well.
Saturday ones?
Yeah, Saturdays and after school ones. And we can essentially build on what we've been doing. And then that would be built upon what's going on in the classrooms as well, especially, but not exclusively in the junior year. And this is back before you came on board, I believe it was, we actually had, we had a kind of a critical mass of kids, not a large group, but a large enough group, that we actually created a whole separate prep program for that group that year during the first semester. And it was primarily in the form of an English-based class. Chris Mellonbridge taught it. But the success for the greatest success for our kids in terms of SAT is on the reading, the writing, and so forth. Math is, I mean, it's almost there. I mean, it's come up a good 15 percentage points from probably mid 80 percentile or low 80 percentile up to about 94, 95, with English being a little bit higher than that. So what we're going to be doing is assessing and then adjusting the preparation according to where the strengths are.
Yeah, I've done it with science always is like only ACT.
Yeah,
where we get
because
full-
ACT has the science reasoning section. I
So,
missed the
yeah.
ACT actually.
SAT, we usually aren't for that. Well, we could.
Well,
We do a lot of
the core skills are in math and in reading comprehension and so forth. So that can be applied then to any other content areas.
There's a science question in the reading portion, I think.
What?
There's always a science question.
Oh,
But
that's
but
true.
they-
Yeah.
but they
like
usually
the
provide all
classification.
the information you need.
That's
It's a question of, and that's where the science reasoning goes
Yeah.
back to with regard to the ACT. It's how you use that data to answer the questions. You know, they provide you with all the data.
You got you telling me, this was on the test, how am I supposed to know about it? It's like, it's in there, plans you. He's gonna be upset at me. They're gonna say we didn't cover this.
Is it 5 p.m.?
Esoteric.
No,
content.
8:14.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Kind of sometimes I'm.
I was like, what's it, 9 to 10
Um,
p.m.? Like, we haven't been here that long.
Recall us to order. Okay, I will recall us to order. It's 8:14.
Okay, do roll call. Andrade,
Present.
Clancy,
Present.
Cresswell,
Here.
Sorry, Hillbrands.
Here.
Kurt,
Here.
Land,
Here.
Leavenworth.
Here.
Not here. Martinson,
Here.
Menjivar,
Present.
Powers.
Here.
Ben.
Here.
All right, let me plus this up. I sent, Dr. Parth provided clarifications for my questions. I sent that in an email today. I'll present this. And, very little changes. We just got some good clarifications. And, I'm just gonna pull up, slides. Sorry. So capstone will get 1,200. Dr. Parth mentioned that there would be no additional line item. However, is that gonna come from general fees then?
It'll come from general
Okay.
accounts, yeah. Rather than create a line item that's small.
Sure. And then Project Lead the Way, excuse my typo. The CTE funds that, so we don't need to fund that. It shouldn't be in our 124 account. So that was, oops, Mr. Bernie took that out. Left the 25K for test prep and college counseling, test prep and 25K for college counseling. And this is Dr. Parr's from the email summer college application process workshop for identified students, and for the English math department planning and organic SAT prep, which you were listening to the break, Ellen and Cars were discussing. Added a line for capital projects. This was a blinds replacement, as Dr. Cars mentioned, just going floor by floor. We updated software costs and updated textbook lines. There's not that many textbooks, we left in miscellaneous, so if there were to be novel replacements or mid-year needs, that would be identified. OST will happen, but the actual dollar amount is TBD. And then I guess, what's not in here is we're waiting to see if this athletic director, if we get a position number.
Yeah. Up to this point, we've not been given any further information other than it is going to be covered. But we don't know what that means in terms of the actual dollar amounts.
Alexandra?
I had a question based on some of the concerns expressed by Lily earlier. I'm not sure if this is where it would be, but do we have a section of our budget designated to maintenance of things like cameras and making sure that everything works and is consistently working? And if so, what could we do better to make sure that our appliances are consistently working within our budget?
That does not come out of this operational budget or this particular part of the budget. Instead, it comes out of any general funds that we need to utilize or any capital support we can get from CPS. So for example, this year we have CPS providing covering repair costs for the elevator problems we've been having because of the overall cost of that. However, some other smaller things, for example, we had some steps in the courtyard that needed to be repaired. We got those repaired and we covered the costs there. And some of these other things that are related to ADA accessibility and safety. So anytime we're finding something, we're trying to repair it, and I will have the engineers and to some extent the custodial team, even though they're not directly involved in this, do a little bit more of much more of a survey during the course of the summer, area by area, to determine if we have everything in fully operational order. Sometimes something is not operating properly and we don't know that because we're not using it, for example. But for example, anything from loose hand railings up to steps that need to be repaired and so forth. Again, the work on the elevator is continuing. We've got the one repair and we're talking about the North Campus. The one that has been down for a long period of time, in fact, most of the school year. The motor cabling and everything is supposed to be taken care of during the summer. But again, that comes out of CPS capital budget.
Mr. Bernie, do you want to go next, actually, and then I'll go to Daniel. So.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'll be brief. Just to piggyback on what Dr. Powers has mentioned, these are capital improvements with particular focus on the cameras, though. Safety and security has a liability and responsibility to assist us with that. I've worked with them in the past at my previous school with camera work, and whether it's them funding it all or partnering up, because it's so late in the year, their budgets are depleted at this point, and they have to work with within their means as well. But it's definitely a shared effort. So we will be working with safety and security on those camera issues. But what we have dedicated and done since I've been here, at least on my short time, we did purchase new computers for the security specifically for the main monitoring stations, so that they work a lot better with the current cameras that we have. Because I guess there were some clarity issues, and I'm not a tech person, but there were clarity issues and I don't know what you call it, but the speed of it wasn't as good. So we worked with Ms. Trosh, and we did purchase a couple of computers.
We also have a not a proposal. We have a quote on being able to install some exterior cameras on the North Campus, particularly at the intersection of Harrison and State, because that is a blind spot. And even if something happens outside of the school, on a number of occasions, we've been called by the police to say, do you have any footage of anything in that area? and nothing's ever been installed in that area. So we've got that as a separate project that needs to be done, but then all the other areas that need to have the cameras working properly. In most cases, we're thinking that it's not the cameras themselves. It has to do with all the connectivity and the compatibility and so forth. So we've taken a step forward with the new computers for monitoring, and we're hoping we'll be able to get the rest of this done. The recent statement by CEO Martinez talked about additional funds being made available for some of these things, particularly he cited camera work as well. So that's something we can do. The south building is the cameras are well positioned, generally speaking, but not all of them are recording and properly being viewed. And on the north side, we've got some expanding to do is what it comes down to, because it wasn't as fully developed when that building was built or when those were added to it.
Yeah, I found in the documents, we set aside $31,865 on 115 funds for cameras or other identified security. This is the balance of the SRM fund. So we do have it, not as part of our internal accounts, but we did approve that at the end of March. Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. Thanks. Daniel?
I just wanted to reiterate one thing I said before. When you're surveying maintenance, I would say one thing to pay attention is the water filters. I know you said last time that students should just inform you or inform admin, whatever, but I don't want you getting like 7 emails saying like, water fountains are broken. So it's just like a big thing. A lot of them are.
I actually spoke to the engineers about that, and they were already, part of the difficulty is that they don't have the means to maintain the equipment. The equipment has to be maintained and replaced by an outside vendor. So I will follow up with them. That's another good summer project if we can get that accomplished. Also, I'm hoping at some point we'll be allowed to use the regular drinking fountains as well.
Okay, thank you. And then also, real quick, the 25K for summer college application process, I'm glad that's like in the works. Who are identified students like for it?
We'll work with the counselors, especially, well, everybody has rising seniors in their caseload. Identifying students based on not only their GPAs and other issues revolving around their grades, but also looking at their PSAT scores, because we will have PSAT scores this year, which we did not have the 2 previous years for our rising juniors. And well, again, I'm crossing my wires here. We're talking about the college application. We'll be looking at like their SAT results from their junior year. That'll be part of it, along with the grades and so forth.
Okay. One criteria I would just recommend also the first generation college students.
Yeah, and that's all something that we can track up. The counselors too. Yeah.
Thank you.
And is that, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
just to follow along Daniel's question, that summer program is gonna happen this year, this summer?
That is our goal, is to have it probably a 3-day workshop. It'll probably be in early August is what we're looking at.
Great, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well,
My questions all covered. Thank you.
This slide has been updated. This is actual collections versus projected. And just remember that that doesn't mean that we had more students or something. It just means that maybe people were paying off their old balances. So the dance fee looks like it's less, but there was an activity fee. So that one was a little complicated. But other than that, nothing else has really changed. Let me, these dollar amounts actually will stay the same in the internal accounts breakdown. It was just, if you click, I could put it in this, in the chat, but it's Mr. Bernie's spreadsheet that you guys have access to. We haven't like opened it to the masses yet until it's finalized, but that one lists all the percents and allocations that we talked about last time. So nothing major has changed. I think this is a good working. And, you know, Mr. Bernie and I met and we had a big conversation about, this will be his first opening. So he really wants to see how it goes before he would make any more recommendations. He wants to see how how cash flow is and everything, and then potentially try, you know, make some recommendations for efficiency or not. You know, it just depends on what he finds. Other than that, it was very little changes. We just got those clarifications about the software, which if you click through the spreadsheet, you'll see that, the scheduling software never was SOPA approved, or SAPA, or however you want to say that. So that has been removed from the spreadsheet. So has the project lead the way, because that's funded by CTE. And then we added the capital projects line item, and that's about it.
Daniel?
I know you said you were adding a line item for the AP capstone, just because it's a small amount. Like, how will Miss Miller be guaranteed that, you know?
All she has to do is submit it and we will pay for it.
Okay.
It's primarily materials, fairly easy things to purchase or order and to be paid for. So there's nothing too exotic about it.
Okay.
So the other thing, I guess the other thing that I forgot to mention was, the administration did receive the quote for the labs, to replace the labs, and there were two options. Well, there were two good options. One was a 3-year lease, one was a 5-year lease. And Dr. Powers wrote in the email that they were looking at more considering the 5-year lease.
Because the annual amount will be
It will be
less,
less,
you know.
yeah. But did Ms. Malagan?
I had not spoken directly with her.
Okay.
I was only speaking to Ms. Trosh.
Okay. Yeah, so it just depends on, for 5 years, if that in that 5th year, will it be adequate? It's too bad it's not a 4-year, right? So I think like.
3 years is awfully short.
Yeah, I don't have the number. I feel like it was 51 for 3 years and like 30 for, I don't know, Mr. Bernie, if you have those numbers off the top of your head.
No, I do not have the document in front of me. I apologize.
But it was a significant savings to do the 5-year, which might allow you to do more labs. Yeah, more leases. So obviously that's not something we're gonna approve. This LSC likely will not approve. And I'm not sure how that works if it is like, obviously CPS legal has to approve when you enter that kind of long-term list. So, I don't think that would happen by June, but I know the teachers really would need that equipment by August. So, yes, do it.
That's basically what we're hoping, so we
Right.
can get the ball rolling.
Right.
With the orders. Yeah.
Other than that. Roberta?
I just want to thank the Budget Committee and Sarah and Mr. Bernie for all of your work. And Mr. Bernie, you have just been incredibly welcoming and consistent, and you have, based on my questions alone and just the interaction, you have just been a really knowledgeable and just a great asset and a great addition to this community. And I appreciate you continuously communicating with the Budget Committee, with Dr. Powers, with Sarah, and everybody else on this LSC often. So thank you.
Thank you guys for the opportunity. I appreciate those comments.
So I'm not sure if you want me to do this as a one large motion that's a approval of the distribution of the funds and the school, and no change to the school fees. Or if you want two separate motions.
I think if no one immediately is like, no, hold it separate. Yeah, I think it's fine to do this one.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the distribution of internal accounts as proposed with no additional changes to the fee structure.
Second.
Second. Andrade,
Yes.
Clancy.
Yay.
Hildebrand.
Yay.
Cresswell.
Yay.
Kerr.
Yay.
And
Yes.
Yes.
Not yes, Martinson.
Yes.
Menjivar.
Yes.
Powers.
Yes.
Ben.
Yes.
Right. So thank you for that, Sarah and Mr. Bernie. And so we have, well, I guess we'll do this as a final public participation, like a group public participation. Who wants to be live? One of you can lead. So just a thank you to our students, whom are leaving in like 4 days, will no longer be on the council. And also thank you to Alexandra, who's not here tonight. So we have, so just sort of a general thank you. It's just extremely important to have student voice on it, and you aren't just a voice, you are a real vote. And you know, that's just a crucial thing, especially at the high school level. You know, you are equal members in the LSC community, and you know, it's important to have us on our council, and it's a lot of work. And I feel like, you know, I wish the district would do a better job preparing everyone, adults and youth, but especially I think they really threw you in the mid-year reps this year, and you know, you really, you know, shared a lot with us and took it seriously. So we really appreciate that. So I don't know, hold on to
We'll present you with these
yes,
certificates.
thank you.
And then I have something I want to read for Daniel, and we're gonna present Daniel something. So this is from your teacher, or also
Thank you.
Olivia Guerrero. She says, I'm an English teacher at Jones. I teach Latin American literature, and I am co-sponsor of ALAS, the Association of Latin American Students. While I've never had the pleasure of being Daniel's teacher, I've been lucky to work with him through ALAS through the last 4 years. I want to formally say thank you to Daniel. Watching him be a member of the LSC has made me incredibly proud. He has always been honest, fair, and respectful, and he's always made a conscious effort to be the voice for those who are not heard or those who are afraid to speak up. Daniel has made such a positive impact on the Jones community, and I know that he will continue to do great things. So Daniel, thank you for all you've done and all you will continue to do. And I think we all agree. So Cassie.
If I may before.
Okay.
So I just want to thank the 3 student representatives for your courage to speak up, to be part of this. William and Alexandra, your addition to this LSC has helped me frame things a lot differently. I think you have tried, both of you and all 3 of you have tried to really bring some unity and some cohesiveness in moving in the right direction. And it has absolutely changed the way I have presented myself on this LSC, and I'm very grateful for your participation and your commitment to everyone, right? To everyone you know and those you don't know, or those you walk in through the hallways. You share this space. So William, thank you. Alexandra, thank you so much. Congratulations to Alexandra for her reelection, and she'll be on this student body next year. And to Daniel, we met almost 2.5 years ago. During 2020 in August, when you took on the role to participate in the whole school safety committee. You have been involved, and you have been caring, empathetic, and a strong leader for this school council and this community. And for a while, it was just you. And then you were joined by 2 unbelievable student representatives this year. And I think it's been complimentary of how the 3 of you have worked together. And I have so much admired and been inspired by your leadership for everyone here. And I wish you all the best, and all 3 of you the best in your next endeavors and your journey. And it has been un placer de conocerte, de saber de tu valor, tu pasión para nuestra comunidad. Muchísimas gracias, Danny. So, thank you so much.
And just to let you know that Daniel and Bill will be the first speakers at our graduation ceremony on Wednesday. And, or no, let's, excuse me, on Wednesday is tomorrow. On Sunday. Time flies when you're having fun. And they'll be the sharing the duties and responsibilities of the call to celebration. So they'll be on the stage by themselves for just a few minutes before the processional. And also both of them received the Principals Award this year, which we're very proud of them for that as well.
All right. Great. And yeah, thank you to all three of you, and thank you, Daniel, for stepping up even already last year as a health and safety committee member. And it's so, you know, and then you're working on the health and safety committee. So like you really did so much for the LSC even before you were the student rep. So I really, really appreciate your service there.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to everyone here. I really enjoyed my time here. The late nights. Yeah, I learned a lot about talking to people and battling through differences and compassion. I feel like you've had a lot of compassion here, even through some of the difficult times. So just thank you to every one of you. And thank you for all the hard work you've put in to this LSC. It means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to other students. So just thank you.
Okay, so I think seeing no further business, we are adjourned, and we will see everyone in 2 weeks, or those of you who are still on the council, and everyone who can make it then.
Sorry, you don't need the chat, do you?
No, it's all, it's in my transcript.